Welcome to Lombardi's Legends podcast. Dane here with Wags. Wags, happy 201st podcast. We're broadcasting here on a Sunday evening, one of the last days of February, and I'll tell you what, folks. Off season is now in full swing. The Packers have just a couple weeks to get under the cap, and they are seemingly busy at work, restructuring some contracts to some of their very, very important veterans. Obviously, a lot of it's going to be contingent on what Aaron Rodgers ends up doing or doesn't do as a member of the Green Bay Packers. But, folks, Packers are getting at it. And, Wags, let's just dive right in with some of these restructures because, the first one is an important one, I thought, in Kenny Clark. One of the most important pieces to this young ascending defense, and the Packers at 26 years old, Kenny Clark getting that restructure. He's clearly in the plans for a long time to come.
Sure. And I think it's, by the way, happy Sunday evening to you. Glad to be back talking Packers. For those of you watching later or listening later, I should say, Dane and I decided this was a Sunday night beer sipping episode. So cheers. For those of you on the live, go grab a beer and sip one with us. Pop some predictions, off-season thoughts into the chat. We're live streaming here on Facebook and Twitter and our YouTube channel, courtesy of StreamYard. So, it's been interesting just to take a step back before I dive into the Kenny Clark news and looking at some of the other restructures that the front office has done. It was both necessary and I'm going to say a little bit telling. The players that they've restructured so far. There aren't a lot of options for restructuring. If you look at who they have under contract, it's really guys that they can convert some of their salary into signing bonus. And that's the genesis of what they're doing with the restructuring. So it's already money that was essentially owed, but it does have some ramifications of pushing some of the cap hits into the future. Now, there are some projections that the salary cap is going to go up quite a bit after this new TV deal that the NFL is going to strike in the next couple of seasons. So if you're a team like the Packers and you're, fighting to get under the salary cap, it may be still a little bit of a challenge to do that, but maybe they're not as reticent to push some money into future years with that kind of prognostication on the table. That said, on the flip side, when you look at Kenny Clark, his restructure frees up nearly $10 million under the cap going into next year. So that takes us from that $50 million that were over the cap right down to 40. And this is a big chunk right off the top. Clearly, Kenny Clark is a guy that's just kind of entering his prime, had, as far as I'm concerned, his finest year as a Packer this past season, and no reason to think he's not going to be getting better and better as long as he can stay healthy over the next few years. So he's not going anywhere. This isn't one of those Darius Smith restructures that happened last off season. Kenny Clark is a guy that they'll be happy to pay as long as he's healthy, as I said, for several years to come. And so this is part of the math too, as we look at these restructures. Is this going to be a move for both now and the future? Or is this a move that could potentially be spelling what the plans are for this player in a year or two? And that leads us into Aaron Jones, who was the second guy that they restructured. And his deal was not as big of a restructure. It freed up about $3.5 million for the cap. So between Kenny Clark and Aaron Jones, that freed up around $14 million. But the most important factor here for the time being is that the restructure actually means that Aaron Jones is going to have the highest cap number of any running back in the NFL at this point. Now, that may change in the very near future, going into the 2022-2023 offseason. So what does that mean for the future of a guy like Aaron Jones? We shall see. But he plays a position in running back that a lot of times they don't survive a full second contract. And so the Packers may have signified some things there, but at least for next season, Aaron Jones was a team player here, and the Packers were able to make a restructure with him as well.
Yeah, Wags, and you talk about that Aaron Jones money. It just, I'm looking at the numbers as we talk. They do those two, though, at the 2 void years at the back end. That's seemingly becoming really popular in the league, and that allows the team to spread the money out over 5 years of the cap. So the Packers are definitely pushing this money ahead. $3 million in savings, but it does guarantee he's back next year. I think that the term, all in, whatever, it seems to be a little overplayed at this point when we're talking about teams, but it does seem like the Packers have an eye towards keeping the nucleus of this team together. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And it allows for the Packers to get a second year of that just nasty 1-2 punch of A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. So, without looking too far ahead into the future, at least in the immediate, we're going to have 2 major weapons back in Green Bay, which isn't always a guarantee when you get into these kinds of cap troubles. Looking ahead, though, I will say I think that the Packers front office, which is very good, Russ Ball is just fantastic there and able to maneuvering the cap, but they're definitely banking on an expanded cap into next year. There's no doubt about it. They're hoping for a big number to come in, and right now it's expected to be higher next year, but they're definitely banking on that. Otherwise, next year could be a little bit more challenging with some of these new restructures.
For sure. And then, of course, the third move that came out was another domino there with the restructuring of David Bakhtiari, creating another $8 million plus in some cap space. So right off the bat, the Packers, with 3 restructures, have essentially cleared up almost half of the money that they needed to get back to even. Now they're gonna have to clear more than that, but these are the first dominoes, because now we can get into some of the contract extensions for a couple of big guys, but also looking at some of the guys that are going to be due here. We've got certainly a few guys that are going to be headed into free agency that would be nice to look at. And so we need to free up even more money to even talk about some of those guys. But someone like Jair Alexander, we know there's going to be an extension at some point, most likely this offseason. I'm sure they've been talking and hard at work at that for some time. So that's a guy that you can potentially really save up a bunch more money, perhaps even another 7-8 million against the cap next year, even though they're going to be giving him big money in this deal. So that's kind of the way this works. Is Jair is going to be like at this point, I think he's 13 million against the cap, but most likely you can just about rip most of that up whenever that contract extension comes. And I'm saying whenever, because it's going to happen, folks. Both parties are going to want to get this done, and so that's another domino that's going to fall. So Darius Smith, I think most people pretty sure he's gone. It doesn't seem like he has any interest in working with the Packers front office to get something done. So not saying never going to happen. You never know. Things could be pretty bleak, and maybe he'll have a change of heart and be able to work something out. But I do think it's interesting that there's been whispers that Za'Darius might be a guy that could be appealing to other teams in a trade, which I hadn't even really thought was going to be on the table. But it makes sense considering that he's not going to cost the other team nearly as much as he's going to cost the Packers. So Packers are going to be eating some dead money with Darius Smith, whether they trade or cut him, but it's the same either way. So a trade or a cut with Darius Smith is going to clear about 15 million, just over 15 million against the cap. They're going to be carrying about 12 million plus in a dead cap hit with Darius Smith, whether they trade or cut him. But for a premium pass rusher, if healthy, Darius Smith, I think there's some teams that hey, maybe they'll take a roll of the dice. And heck, if we can get a 4th or 5th round pick even to flip to Darius Smith, I think the Packers are probably going to hang on to him until they have to make a decision and see if there's any teams out there that are with a little bit more cap space that may be willing to take him on or would be motivated to take him on. And that's another prospect out there. But just throwing that out there, just those two guys, we're pretty much going to be pretty close to wiping out this $50 million deficit that we had. And we're not even talking about some of the other big extensions in Davonte Adams and Aaron Rodgers, which we'll be talking about here in a minute. But yeah, Dane, go ahead. I know you're going to jump in there.
Well, with Za'Darius too, I've seen some people say, why would a team trade for Za'Darius Smith if they know he's going to get cut? I just have to push back on that right away and say, because there's no guarantees in free agency. That's the absolute only way a team is going to be able to secure his rights, is to give up some draft capital for him. If they don't do that, now you're just, it's going to the highest bidder, and good for Za'Darius, go earn money, go get it. But there's no way that another team's going to be able to secure his rights. Absolutely. And they might be getting into a bidding war. There's a lot of different things that could be at play. So I think the Packers, to your point, are in actually a pretty good power position right now as far as trading in the NFL goes, because they do have options potentially. And you've got to think right now, I agree. I don't think Za'Darius Smith's a Packer this year. I don't see a chance where that happens realistically. So right now you've got to think the Packers are fielding offers and putting feelers out and seeing what they can do to try to recoup something for Big Z before he leaves.
Yeah, well, definitely not at his current number. And it doesn't seem like, at this point at least, the vibes that we're getting from Za'Darius are real positive. I mean, he always tries to, put a positive spin on things. I get that. But he gets the score. The Packers are not going to keep him next year at a $27 million cap number. So he's either going to have to rip that up or move on. And if you're Darius Smith, you're still considering yourself one of the top premium pass rushers in the league. You're not really highly motivated to do anything to change your contract structure, because I think there's a heck of a lot of teams out there that would be happy to pay Za'Darius Smith $60 million next year. And that's really what you're looking at. So, I don't know why I didn't really think of that earlier, but I do think there's a good chance that the Packers, it may not be a second or a third round pick, but I think they can still get something by flipping Za'Darius Smith here this offseason. So anyway, so that gets us to basically zero. That sets us. So let's get into the meat of the discussion, what we really wanted to dive in here, talk about tonight, because in effect, before we can talk about any of the free agents that we want to bring back, including Davonte Adams, we've got to talk about Aaron Rodgers, number 12. And so, Dane, I started immediately after our playoff loss, was kind of, that seems like a finale. And I think that was kind of your gut instinct too. Then as time went on, I was sort of shifted to, no, it seems like he's coming back. And now I'm kind of shifting to, well, I think he's still going to come back, but it seems like there's some smoke with trade offers. So I don't know if I'm super confident at this point that I know what's going to happen, to be honest with you. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, just piecing together some of the puzzles. You've got great insight and a read into things. And I'm just wondering where you're at when you look at all of the little, nuggets that we've gotten out there, both from the Packer front office, from the actions of Aaron in staying after the season to talk to the Packers front office. Is that to figure out how to stay? Is that for a trade? There's lots of ways that can go, to his recent appearance on Pat McAfee. I mean, there's so many things here. And the fact that he hasn't announced yet, I've got some thoughts on that. He said he was going to do it hopefully by mid-February, and here we are knocking on the door of March, and it doesn't seem like a decision's coming anytime soon. So, Dane, what say you? What's your gut feeling as of today, February 27th, on Aaron Rodgers?
That's a loaded question. I think that, well, there's three routes he can go. He can play for the Packers, he can retire, he can be traded. Those are the three routes, right, that we're looking at. I agree. I think it's fascinating that there's been some leaks that the Packers have multiple trade offers on the table, like teams have been reaching out and presenting it. I don't know how much I believe that, though, to be totally honest with you. I think my money is that he
Can I intercept just a second?
Please.
Who do you think is leaking that? Is that other teams?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I think so too. I
don't think the Packers would be playing in that space right now. They've been very vocal, I think, their hope that he's coming back to the Packers. I'd be pretty surprised at this point if they got caught with, quote unquote, with their pants down, then starting to try to spread trade rumors. That's not a good look for a team that seems to be back to neutral with their fan base. I think that they look pretty good right now. The front office is showing that they put all the effort in for the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes, so to speak. So I'd be shocked if it was somebody with the Packers brass doing that.
So I agree with you on the surface, but both parties, I think, learned a lot from last offseason. And yes, they've got that professional relationship, and I believe that's genuine. I really do. But I think they're also smart enough to realize that playing it this way for both of them gives them plausible deniability into whatever ends up happening here. For the Packers, they've done everything that they can do to retain Aaron Rodgers, and for Aaron Rodgers, he's done everything he can do to repair that relationship and say all the good things. And so part of me sort of hesitates when I see that too, because there could be a long con, for lack of better word, going on here with both sides. I don't think that's what we're seeing. I really don't. I'm not big into that. I don't think that all of the parties involved, when you look at the egos and the pride of what they're trying to get out of this, would be able to hold things together without some snipping going on at some point, if that was actually the case. So I not to take the air out of that little conspiracy theory, but it's out there. I would just say that was something I thought of, and I think other Packer fans are probably thinking the same thing at times when they see this, goody fest going on. Is this actually real, or are they just trying to set us up to make it seem like they did everything they could? And as Packer fans, we're just getting hooked into that hook, line, and sinker. But Dane, anyway, going back then, I don't know if you finished your thought. So you laid out the scenarios. I think we understand that. But right now, what is your gut thought? Where does things stand with Aaron? And if you had to make a prediction, if he was going to announce this week, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think he's coming back to play for the Packers this year, and probably for a couple of years. I think the team's working out a long-term deal. And in fact, I think that Aaron knows. I would argue that maybe the team already knows, and that's why they're starting to make some of the moves that they're doing. I think that there's a bit of an agreement in Green Bay that this is what's going to be happening, and that Aaron's waiting to make the announcement. Maybe it's not a full-throated, yes, I'm back, guys, but I think it's very much a, hey, fellas, I'm leaning a certain way here, and I think that that's where they're at this point. I've kind of felt that way for quite some time now. I know that there was some stuff that had come out, maybe he would retire, and I could still see that happening, but I just, when we take ourselves out of it a little bit and just look from 30,000 feet, Aaron Rodgers doesn't necessarily seem like a guy who's quite ready to retire. I think he still has something to prove. I'd be pretty shocked. He's a competitive guy. I'd be pretty shocked if him getting bounced by the San Francisco 49ers, the team that passed on him all those years ago, that he's been very open. He's pissed about that and wanted to make him pay. I'd be pretty surprised if, okay, they're the ones that knock you out at Lambeau and, see you later. So I think he still has an axe to grind. I think he still has something to prove in this league. I promise you, Aaron Rodgers is hearing the hate that goes on across the country, saying that he's choking in big games. And I do think that this is probably his best opportunity to win, too, is in Green Bay. I can't imagine at 39 dude wants to go somewhere else, a team that has to give up assets to get him. And then for him to go and learn a new offense and go through all of that. We know that Aaron is pretty meticulous with his receivers. He's picky about the routes and all of that. Do you really see at this stage in his career making that switch, especially with an ascending defense and seemingly getting more and more on page with this front office that's very clearly trying to work with him? I would be shocked if it's anything other than Aaron Rodgers back in Green Bay for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that here. We've got some comments coming in here in our chat. I'm going to share one here from Jamie Alvaro. Let's go get Carr. Adam should be our priority. So, sir, Derek Carr, one of Davonte's college teammates, good friends. I get kind of the sentiment in some ways of, you know what, let's cash in our chips with Aaron Rodgers right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to reset likely here in a couple years, either way, even if he comes back. I don't see Aaron playing till 45. He's not Tom Brady in that regard. I just don't see that. I could be wrong, but my gut feeling says Aaron has a couple years left. That would be my prediction. He might have 2, maybe 3 years left. But for me, it seems more likely that Aaron's going to want to probably go out on his own terms and maybe surprise some people. He could get an extension and retire next year. I wouldn't be shocked by that. So I get the feeling from certain Packer fans that have, even though Aaron Rodgers has given so much to this franchise and he obviously makes us a contender every year, he's at the helm. They're looking at it and saying the light's at the end of the tunnel with Aaron Rodgers. Let's cash in and get a whole bunch of picks. Certainly, there's no guarantee that any of those picks work out, but they could get a haul for sure. So Jamie's perspective is one that I think is shared with a lot of Packer fans out there. And they're saying, we love Aaron. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But they're ready to just get what we can from him and hit that reset button now. So I understand that sentiment too. And it's certainly interesting. I will say that if Aaron's going to, talk about whatever happens on McAfee's show, it's not going to be announcing a trade. No. Aaron's not going to be the one that takes the brunt of that.
That's
so
LeBron,
if a trade happens,
yeah,
it's happening, and then he'll go on and talk about it.
Yeah.
So if he's going to announce anything on McAfee, it's coming back or retiring. So that's something I think realistically, Aaron's not going to take the heat for going on and saying I'm going somewhere else before the team announces anything. So yeah, I don't know, Dane, what do you feel about the trade thing? You said that you feel like that's other teams leaking that out there, and that's just a bunch of smoke. But I don't know if I should be surprised, but I was a little bit surprised this past week that there were reports that multiple teams have put offers on the table. So not just, they're talking and they're interested, but actual offers on the table for the Packers. So what does that tell you? I don't know.
I don't know if they know anything more than we know. I think you shoot your shot if you're a front office that thinks you're close.
I think
say that's what it is.
That I think whatever happens, if they're going to extend Aaron, they're not going to wait until April, or they need to get this done before March 15th if they're going to extend Aaron. So we're going to know soon. I really strongly feel that, because they're going to have to make a decision on Davonte Adams, and we'll talk about him in a couple of minutes. But if you extend Aaron Rodgers, that's clearing, depending on how they structure that, 15 to 20 million off his cap number next year. So between that and a Darius decision, whether they can trade or cut him before March 15th, you're looking at 30 to 35 million in clearing of space there. And that still isn't enough to, take on Davonte Adams if they do have to use the tag on him.
Right.
And it's also not enough to go out and sign one of a few of these free agents. Devontae Campbell, I have a feeling, is going to cost a little bit more than he did last year for sure. And more than likely, even if they clear another 35 million, you're really only looking at 5 million over the cap. So that's not going to be enough to
Right.
to make a signing of Davonte Campbell, or even a Chandon Sullivan or some of these other guys that are unrestricted free agents. So if they want to make some moves on them before they hit the open market, they're going to have to not only make those two moves with Darius and Aaron Rodgers, but at least probably one other extension, one other cut, a couple more restructures in order to get in position to be able to keep some of these guys. And what's the point of not getting that done if they want to keep some of these guys and quote unquote go all in again? They're going to need these moves to happen before March 15th for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not talking 10 million here, but even 4 million, which is going to be a lot when it's tight. Mason Crosby. The Packers are carrying 3 kickers right now, folks. I can't remember that ever happening as a Packer fan. And bringing in a young man from, I think he was in Oakland or I guess Las Vegas prior to this, but the Packers are clearly going with competition there between he and JJ Molson. I've got to wonder, and I'm just speculating, if the Packers know something about Mason maybe retiring here, and that's why they're holding the third, because the company line has been we're keeping him on the 90 and all of that, but you got to wonder if maybe Mason's. I mean, what else does the guy have to prove? Again, pure speculation, but I don't expect the Packers to carry 3 kickers on the 90 and one of them making $4 million. When they're in the cap situation they're in, it's just not realistic.
Yeah, I agree, and certainly if you're going to make that move, it makes sense that now would be the time to do it. And bringing in Rich Bisaccia, who was with the Raiders, he's got a relationship with the kicker as well, so it seems inevitable that might be something that happens with Mason. And we've got a couple other guys that we could restructure, and I'm just looking at according to Over the Cap. Adrian Amos is one. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Randall Cobb. I think that's totally contingent on Aaron. But if they want to kick some money down the can with Randall, perhaps they do and bring him back for one more year. I don't have a problem with that. But there's not a lot of other moves. Then you're really looking at Dean Lowry and Billy Turner. And that's about it. Between all of those guys, you can restructure, and it's a chunk of change, especially if you include Mason in that. You're looking at about 14 million with those 4 guys. But there's, that's going to move the needle. I get it. So I think this week we'll probably be hearing about Billy Turner. We'll probably be hearing about Dean Lowry, perhaps. I think Randall Cobb and Aaron Rodgers kind of happen around the same time, whether Cobb gets cut and Rodgers is gone, or Rodgers gets extended and they restructure Cobb. I think that's going to be kind of a hand-in-hand type of deal. So yeah, I mean, there's some ways here. Let's just say that Goody and Russ Ball and the rest of this Packer front office is going to be very busy for the next week or two, especially if you want to try to get a couple of extensions in there. I mean, it's crazy to think about. That's not an easy thing to do, to be talking and trying to get multiple extensions done at the same time. So it's going to be complicated, but I think, as you've been saying all along, they have a plan. But the best laid plans, as we know, don't necessarily come to fruition. So everything kind of has to go according to what they want. And when you're negotiating with both parties and multiple parties at once, things can break down in a hurry. So anyway, Dane, before we
Wags,
go ahead.
One last thing with Rodgers, I can't believe we didn't mention it. We have to. The Packers bringing in Tom Clements to be quarterbacks coach again, I think is a huge indicator. The man's 68 years old, was retired from football. He's coming back. He has a very, very close relationship with Aaron. I would have a very, very big surprise if he's coming back to coach Jordan Love. No offense to Jordan Love. He just doesn't have that relationship with Jordan like he does with Aaron. This feels very, very much like we're going to bring back Aaron's guy that he's had a lot of success with, that he's close with, outside of the field even, to be a part of this, maybe last couple year push with Aaron. So that's just something we got to mention.
I completely agree. I mean, He obviously likes coaching young quarterbacks. I mean, he was down in Arizona for, was it 1 or 2 years?
Couple years,
but
I think.
yeah, but he was retired for a few years after 2015 when he was not retained on the Packers staff. So this isn't a guy that clearly feels like he needs to be working right now. So you know, Jordan Love, I'm sure, would benefit from working with Coach Clements, but from Coach Clements' perspective, is that really what's bringing him back? I think that's definitely another breadcrumb that is an indicator for sure.
And they offer him best of both worlds, really, because he gets to work with Aaron. But to your point, he likes working with young quarterbacks. The pitch is you get to work with Aaron Rodgers, but you're also able to kind of mold the next quarterback here potentially. So it's a really interesting role for him.
For sure. So, Dane, I think before we get into our next half of the discussion with Davonte Adams, we should pay some bills and talk about DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NFL. And of course, football season is over, but we've still got deals from DraftKings using our promo code TPPN. So, Dane, have you gotten your wife Andrea converted with all of her football winnings over to the NBA, college basketball? What's going on with her?
Oh, she's NBA. Go Bucks, basically. She's gone from doing AJ Dillon a number of weeks to, you name it on the Milwaukee Bucks, but she's all in on Bucks individual players. She's in on the whole thing. So she's having a lot of fun. And really, Wags, it's all because of DraftKings Sportsbook, this awesome deal where you use promo code TPPN. She had not been on this app, until their promo code to start the football season. And now she's been all in. She's having a ton of fun, watching basketball games. I think she's watching the NBA right now upstairs as you and I are talking. So it's a lot of fun. So thanks, DraftKings. It's a lot of fun doing what you're doing.
For sure. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Bet just $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code TPPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus minimum age and location requirements vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full list of requirements and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Void where prohibited. Minimum $5 deposit. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Tennessee, call or text Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789. In Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. All right. So, Dane, let's talk Davonte Adams then. I think this is going to be one of those deals that, while there is some contingency on what Aaron Rodgers wants to do, from the Packers' perspective, if they don't work out an extension, and I'd be actually kind of surprised if they did work out an extension before the deadline, but you have to use the I'm blanking out the tag. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We have to use the tag on Davonte. You can't just let an asset like that walk out the door without getting anything in return. And all respect to Davonte, totally get it. Nobody wants to play under the tag, and he is worth more than what he will get under the tag. There's no doubt about it. From the team perspective, normally I think a lot of people side with the player in these situations. And this is just one of those deals, Dane, where Davonte, because of his age, he's played out 2 contracts now. And even though he definitely deserves to be paid, from the Packers standpoint, with where we are against the cap, we need Davonte, but we also don't want to be tied, I don't think, to Davonte when he's 35 years old, getting paid $25-30 million a year. So this is going to be a delicate dance. And I'm, again, curious to hear what your thoughts are, but ultimately the team has all the leverage here. And I just can't see them allowing Davonte Adams to get out the door without being tagged or extended in some way. And unfortunately for Davonte, I think where this is headed is he's more than likely going to get one of those deals where it looks like a ton of money on paper, but it's really a 2-year contract. And it sucks for him. He's going to know it. Everybody's going to know it. But how is he going to be able to get out of that? Because that's the only way that the Packers are going to feel comfortable paying him that premium money the next couple of years is if they can get out of it in 2 or 3 seasons. Davonte's not going to like that, but his only other option is to play against the cap or not play at all, which I don't think he's going to like either of those options either. So it could get drawn out for quite some time. But Dane, I'm going to hand it over to you. Do you see any scenario where Davonte isn't tagged? I guess they could work out an extension before that, but I think the Packers are, and from their perspective, I think it's beneficial to tag him. I know it's bad for business in some ways, but from a leverage standpoint, I really feel like they need to tag him and let this play out. I wish I wasn't saying that because I'm usually pro player, but in this situation, it really sucks for Davonte. It really does, but I don't see any other way that the Packers can approach this. Do you?
No, I don't. And I agree. Davonte's earned every penny he can make. So, he wants to maybe be the highest paid receiver. He should be. He's fantastic. He's proven to be good. When Aaron was hurt with Brett Hundley, dude can ball. Looking at it from the team perspective and as a Packers fan first, though, generally speaking, it's probably not great to sign nearly 30-year-old wide receivers to massive contracts. That's just how it goes in this league. So I think the team's going to tag Davonte. From there, I could go either way on if he's in Green Bay next year or if he's somewhere else. I really could because I think Davonte is going to be holding out for something here. And he's shown that he doesn't want to hold out by the literal sense, I think, in the past. But I do think the Packers are going to probably maybe he stays, but Wags, I really do. I think it's 50-50. If a team offers assets before the draft for Davonte Adams and they have a chance to go and recoup something, for him and let him walk, they might do it. Now you ask, who else at wide receiver is going to step up? MVS is a free agent as well. Lazard's a restricted free agent, all of this. That's something the front office is going to need to have a contingency plan for. And I would hope that they kind of have one in place already should they trade Davonte Adams. But I don't see him walking without the Packers getting something in return. But B, I kind of have a hard time envisioning the Packers in their current cap situation giving Davonte Adams the type of money that he's earned over the last few years.
I'm surprised to hear you say that, honestly. I feel like that is 50-50. If Aaron Rodgers is back, you honestly think that the Packers would move on from Davonte Adams? I get they're not a package deal, but you're going to leave the wide receiver room bare, and Aaron's going to agree to that. Here's, folks, this is why Aaron hasn't come back yet. He's using leverage to try to get his friend Davonte an extension. That's just as much on the table with his delaying and dragging his feet here, because that's the only leverage that Aaron has over the Packers front office to build urgency to get something done with Davonte Adams. He's trying to help his brother out here, but I just don't see the Packers having any reason other than they want to get something worked out with Aaron and get that all taken care of. So there's a delicate dance going on here, Dane, but and I get the 50-50 in a vacuum, but if Aaron Rodgers is back, there's no way, in my opinion, that Davonte Adams is not back with the Packers. I just don't see any scenario that happens.
Then Aaron can't be making $50 million a year. That's just a reality. I don't know how they make it work. That's the thing.
Well, it's going to be hard enough to fill out this wide receiver group. As it is, even if they bring Davonte back. So I'm sorry. I guess I get where your head's at, but these things I think are so intertwined that it's hard for me to separate that there isn't something that these dominoes have to fall together in some ways. Now, if things break down and the Packers are like, I guess we're just going to trade Aaron Rodgers, this isn't going to work, and that's the direction they decide to go, I'd be
Adams
surprised.
gone.
Then I completely agree. I would say it's more like 90% that Davonte Adams gets traded then in that situation as well. So from a purely mathematical standpoint, if you're factoring in all scenarios, then I kind of get the 50-50. But since we're really thinking Aaron's more likely to be back, to me, I guess I feel like, Aaron's not coming back with, a bare wide receiver room and starting over with a bunch of rookies and second-year players and maybe Randall Cobb as the veteran of that group. That just doesn't work, in my opinion. And it's not like letting Davonte Adams out the door all of a sudden creates, tons more cap space for the Packers where they can go out and get another premium receiver to potentially replace him. So, the options here are not wonderful for letting Davonte Adams go unless you're hitting that reset button, in my opinion.
Well, Wags, and that begs the bigger question. Maybe we don't have time for it today, maybe on a future podcast. What should the Packers do? Because right now we're talking what we think they're going to do, but what is the wise decision for the health of the organization long term? I get a little nervous, and this is not a knock on any individual player here. This is Father Time is undefeated discussion a little bit. I get nervous when we start talking about tons of guys coming back over 30. Not a knock on any individual guy. I love these guys. I love our players on this team, but it just starts to make me nervous. I don't recall the last time a ton of guys that are getting up there all kind of get together. Other than maybe Tampa Bay, but they had a really young, fast defense, and the Packers are getting there on that front. But I don't know. I'm kind of talking in circles. I'm a little squeamish though, investing tons of money in guys 30 plus. That I guess is what it comes to.
I agree with you. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think Rodgers is back with an extension that frees up a bunch of cap. Davonte might still end up getting tagged. But the reality is, if Davonte wants to get paid for the next couple of years, close to that $30 million that he thinks he's worth, and he probably is worth that based on the wide receiver market where it is. I know these numbers sound insane, but that's just the way that these contracts are going. So it's going to be a 4 or 5 year deal, probably a 5-year deal. But the reality is, it's going to be structured that the Packers are going to be able to get out from under it after the second year. And Davonte's not going to like that. I fully acknowledge that. But what other choice does he really have? He can play for less money for a 1-year deal if he stays tagged. Mm-hmm. He might sit out for a while. He's going to try to maximize all the leverage he can. He's not going to sign that deal right away. But at the end of the day, he can either retire, sit out the year, or cash in and take the money now. And it sucks for Davonte Adams, but the reality is the Packers have all the leverage. And so it would be foolish for them to give in and lock themselves into a long-term contract that's going to put them in cap hell with Davonte Adams 4 or 5 years down the road. So to answer your question, Dane, I think we're in full agreement on that. We love Davonte Adams. He's worth every penny of that highest paid NFL wide receiver today, in our opinion. But it's 3 years from now that we're not so sure about, given his age. And so that's the way I really feel like this ends up playing out. And maybe Davonte looks at the end of the gun barrel and says, that's the scenario that's going to happen, whether I sign it now or I wait until September. Perhaps not. I don't know. Normally with the players, they're gonna extend it out as much as they can to make things uncomfortable for the team. But we'll see. We'll see what they're able to do. And ultimately, though, I think that's the end game for both parties.
It feels like, as you mentioned, I mean, NFL is a deadline-driven league, as is most of America on things. And I feel like we're hitting some deadlines here. I think March 16th is the start of the new league year. Rodgers is going to have to give an answer here in the next week or two. Probably the next week, realistically, maybe even Tuesday. So I would expect, Wags, whenever that announcement comes, we're going to have to jump back on this podcast and start talking about Aaron Rodgers and what's next. And also, I don't remember if we did this last year, a few years ago, but we did predictions on all of the free agents, on who's coming back, who's not, all of that. And right now, until we know Aaron Rodgers, it's just not fair to do it. But then after that, I would love for us to be able to jump on and talk about, who each of us thinks coming back and who's not from this free agent group.
Yeah, and those things could be happening very quickly. So we're going to have to be ready to go. And folks, you're going to have to be ready to jump back on with us because once that first domino falls, things could just be going in rapid succession here. It's going to be exciting. I really hope that we don't get to March 15th without certain things happening, because if that's the case, it's probably not a good sign for next season, at least. But, we've been patient so far. And I think with these contract restructures that have started to happen here, the ball is rolling now. So this next week could be an exciting week as we get into the meat of preparation for free agency.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, Wags, it's been fun. It's been fun talking about this. And I'm looking forward to this week as well. Any parting shots you have for this podcast tonight?
Just, hey, everybody, thanks for jumping on. Appreciate all the comments and chat. Honestly, as crazy as it may sound, is I feel like sometimes when we get into these off-season discussions, it's so insight driven. Dane, I just love talking about these things with you because not to pat ourselves on the back, but I really feel like we've got a pulse of the business and on the player side of things and can have kind of a even keeled perspective on what might be going on here. So for those of you that have joined us, I hope you took something out of that discussion, enjoyed it, if nothing else. And we'll be ready to come back on and continue to talk some off-season Packers, and really, really looking forward to some additional, that first extension. I know it's coming. So
it's coming. Jair's coming, Wags.
Jair's coming for sure. So absolutely. So folks, stay tuned here in the next week or so, probably next Sunday night, perhaps is a good plan, unless something major happens here during the week. So thanks so much for tuning in and listening. And as always, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.